Today, I'd like to talk about the difference between motivational speakers and the kind of stuff they come out with, all that kind of positive thinking type thing, which has been very popular in the past and still is pretty popular, particularly in the business world, I think, possibly in sports as well, and also still to some extent, maybe to quite a large extent in everyday life. We still tend to be in the market for this motivational type stuff. And I want to contrast that with negative philosophy, which in one way we can see that's going to be quite a straightforward thing to contrast the one with the other. But in order to really make it clear, we're going to have to get familiarized with a few ideas or notions that are a little bit unfamiliar, or probably, or a little bit strange to get to grips with. But it's worth making the effort because that will add to the clarity of the argument a huge bit if we can just go along with these ideas a little bit. So the first idea is the idea of otherness, and that is completely contrary to how we normally think, because otherness means no matter what we think about things, the reality is always completely other meaning that it really is completely other. It's got nothing to do with what we think at all. It goes off at right angles. There's absolutely no connection. So that's also true for what we think of ourselves, who I think I am. The truth of who we are is completely other to what or who we think we are, which is kind of a remarkable idea. Even if you don't believe it, it's still an interesting idea to play around with. And we could say that there's two basic ways of looking at the world, or two basic types of world that there could be. So the first type would be the world where everything just is what it appears to be to a greater or lesser extent. And when we look more closely at things, we can fill in the details and get to know it better. But what we are studying doesn't suddenly turn around on us and show itself to be other. So that's a straightforward kind of a world to live in. Actual always equals expected. So this is a universal confirmation. Our ideas are confirmed. And we could also say that this is a world that doesn't really support philosophers, because what would a philosopher do in such a world where everything is what it appears to be? What scope is there for philosophy in that? If I was a philosophy, I could say, well, things are what they appear to be, but that's it. That's the limit of my philosophical input, and that doesn't really, it's not hardly worth the effort, because everyone knows in that world that things are what they seem to be anyway. So it's like going around saying that the sun is bright, or the sky is blue, or trees are green. You're not going to get any kudos for that. It's, you won't get a career out of it. So that particular world is a world that cannot sustain philosophers. Instead, there's just doers. Being a philosopher in that world is a really dumb and stupid and wimpish and pathetic thing to be. We wouldn't have any time for them. It really is a lot of navel gazing. That's a word that I think that's what it implies. Navel gazing implies that, well, what are you doing with all this contemplation? It's not getting you anywhere. We all know what things are anyway, you big idiot. So even if we don't live in this world, the universal confirmation, even if we don't live there, we all act as if we do, and we think we do. We carry on as if we are. So, of course, the other possibility is where we live in a world where things appear to be something, but under closer examination, they reveal themselves to be completely other. So it's like everything's like a jack-in-the-box. You're getting on quite nicely, but you press the wrong button and it jumps up and scares the bejesus out of you. Scares the shite right out of you. So that's a different type of universe. That's the universe of radical surprises. So take your pick, really. Which universe is it? Is it a dumb old universe where everything just is what it says it is? That what's in the tin is what it says on the label, and actual always equals expected? What a dumb world. What a boring world. But it could be true. Theoretically, you could say, yeah, life could be dumb. The universe could be a dumb place. Not a place for philosophers, but just a place for doers who are doing. Doing is great. It's not philosophical, it's just doing. It's concrete. It's, yeah, this person's actually achieved something. They're not coming out with a bit of gobbledygook. That can't help anybody. So, in the world where everything is what it seems to be, we are who we feel we are, or think we are, or perceive ourselves to be. And this is the world where motivational speakers truly have free reign. This is their territory. And the reason I say that is because the whole thing about motivational speakers and the stuff they talk about is based on this particular one thing, which is lots and lots of things are possible for us. All that's needed, variously could be said, to be willpower, true dedication and willpower. That's an important one. Another thing could be hard work, sticking at it, not taking no for an answer. And the third one would be the means, the methods that we go about it in a way that works. So it's no good just being determined and not giving up. You've also got to go around it about it in the right way. But if you've got all three of those things, then that really is a magic combination. That you're totally determined, you're absolutely confident. Because if you start jinxing yourself out being unconfident, obviously nothing's going to work for you. So the whole idea is that if you absolutely know in the very seat of your soul that you can do anything you want to, just put all that negative thinking away, all that doubt away, all that jinxing type stuff. And then you've also got the right method, and you've also got the willpower to keep on at it. Doesn't matter if you fail. And then according to this scheme, you will get there, and that's an amazing thing. And when we say it like that, straight away there's a part of us thinks, yeah, that makes sense. And in some of us, that's a really big part, and we go for it. We think, yes, absolutely, because it's an empowering message, so it seems. But it's only an empowering message if we're living in the dumbass world where everything is what it appears to be. And if it is the case, then these guys are right on the money, and that's fine. But just for the sake of exploring a bit, let's suppose that it isn't that type of universe at all. That it isn't a universe where what you see on the label of the tin is what is actually in the tin, where everything is face value. Suppose it isn't. In that case, we aren't who we think we are. So all of this belief in ourselves, which seems so positive, isn't so positive at all, because we're not believing in who we really are. We're believing in who we appear to be. And all of these possibilities that we think are there, if we've got the magic combination of factors working for it, the magic formula, we're absolutely convinced this will work out for us. But because right at the very beginning there's this huge error, which is actually that who we think we are isn't who we are. So the whole thing goes off on the wrong footing. It's going off in a ridiculous, no matter how much effort we put into it. You can see clearly that we can put a titanic amount of effort into it and be hugely, hugely confident and immensely persevere. We could have immense perseverance and all the rest of it. You name it, we can have that. I'm granting in this thought experiment that you can have all of that stuff, pure determination, pure willpower, never taking no for an answer, absolute, total, blinding confidence, all of that. No limits, you can have all of that. But if you're trying to actualize possibilities that exist for someone who you're not, that's never going to work, because there are no possibilities for a fiction, only fictional possibilities, and fictional possibilities are obviously they're not worth a damn. So it can be seen very, very easily that in case 2, in the second type of a universe, which is the universe of radical surprises, all of this lack of philosophy, lack of reflection, and just pure bullheaded charging on ahead like a fucking tank, or like a bulldozer, all the bulldozer stuff, and the veins are sticking out in your neck, and you're gritting, and you're determined, all that stuff we love, pure He-Man stuff. It ain't going to work, because although you are fantastically dedicated and you're totally confident and you've got huge resources of determination and resilience and all the rest of it, the basic thing up here, which is called the cop on, or the sense to realize that, well, I think about things, are things really what they seem to be, or could there be more to reality than I immediately understand them to be? Because we never went there, the whole thing is just bullshit. Because obviously only these possibilities only exist for who we really are, and no possibilities exist for who we wrongly think we are, because we're too short-sighted or in too much of a damn hurry is really what it is. We just want to get the good stuff, and we're not going to check our bases too much. We're going to pelt off and spend the rest of our lives trying to get all the good stuff based on greed, really, instead of being curious about what's going on. So we've substituted pure bullheaded greed and determination to get the good stuff, and to get things to work out for us, for actual curiosity, which is what philosophy comes down to. We're curious about what the truth really is. The action paradigm, the important thing is to get what you want to get, to achieve your goal. That's what we really want. We're not in the least bit curious or interested in finding out that perhaps that what we want isn't really worth having anyway, and even more, we're not curious about finding out about the possibility that who we think we are that wants the goal isn't who we really are anyway, which makes the goal totally absurd and an awful red herring, because the more time we spend chasing it, the less, because eventually we're going to have to come back to the blackboard, because that's what always happens. If we start off on the wrong footing, and no matter how much work you put into it, no matter how much of an amazing thing we create, if it's on a false footing, an unreal footing, no matter, even if you put titanic work and effort into it, it's only going to end one way. Back to square one, back to the starting board. It's like, okay, start all over again. And boy, does that hurt when you've put a titanic amount of effort into it. So we can see that it really isn't a matter of bull-like strength and the huge effort and the absolute determination. All that stuff is dangerous, dangerous nonsense if it's coming out of stupidity. So first we have to not be stupid. Stupid kind of translates as just assuming that everything is what it seems to be. Now, if we're in the type of universe where that happens to be the case, that's fine. We're still stupid, really, of course, because we're not at all curious. We're still dumb, but that dumbness will work for us because we're in a dumb universe. We're in a dumb world. But who knows? Maybe we're not in a dumb universe. Give the universe a bit of credit, for God's sake. Maybe it's not all it appears to be on the surface. Maybe there is more to things than we think there is. In which case, it really is worth our while getting a little bit curious first. Because our whole lives effectively are going to waste if we don't. So it can be seen that the kind of archetypal classic motivational speaker, he is very much about all on the surface, sounding confident, sounding strong, looking confident, looking strong, making these big bold statements. But the one thing there isn't in that package is genuine philosophical interest in the world, and that's an important thing. That's a good thing. It's kind of like that's where all the good stuff comes out of. Good stuff doesn't come out of bullheadedly trying to achieve your goals and never reflecting on the worth of those goals or the legitimacy of the idea that you are that going to be benefited by them, or that it is really you who wants them. And that if you were to really check in with yourself, maybe you wouldn't want these dumb or stupid goals, because probably you just kind of latched onto them, and that you've absorbed them from your social milieu. Oh yeah, this is what people want, therefore I want it too. Or, yeah, people will want this, therefore I want it. All that kind of copycat type stuff where we don't know nothing, but we quickly copy everyone else, and that covers it over, because then everyone's copying everyone else, and no one will know that you don't really know what you're doing. So that's the route to go down if we don't want to take the time to be curious and trying to find out things for ourselves. Then we just act like we already know because everyone else is acting like they already know. So we get caught up in that. And that has an awful lot of, it seems to have a lot of mileage, because that seems to be what works in this world. But the proviso being that just because we all agree that it works, and we all agree not to ever question that, it doesn't actually prove that it's true or prove that it does work, because the whole thing could be a sham. And if it is a sham, then we don't really want to buy into it. But all this business of asserting what you want and being very clear what you want, that's all that external stuff, complete lack of any interest in the inside world. That if that were true, we would be able to will ourselves out of any problem, compel ourselves to be what we want to be. We would actually be genuinely empowered to become what we want to be and have control over it and get what we want to get, and all of that stuff, which sounds really good to us. But in actual fact, once we enter into the territory of neuroticism, and then we learn something very important. We learn that our desire to facilitate and improve the lot of who we imagine ourselves to be actually rebounds on us. So instead of our willpower helping us out of a hole, the more determined we are to get out of that hole on the basis of who we're not, the more tied up we are, the more of a hole we dig for ourselves. So we learn something very interesting in neurosis, and that is that our pure determination, our pure willpower, our striving, our ability to keep on trying acts totally against us, because it's all on the basis of who we're not, if we are prepared to go along with this particular way of looking at things, which, even if we're not, we can think about it just to see, well, how does this view of mental health contrast with the positive thinking view of mental health, where all holes can be climbed out of by willpower and effort and the right methods? I would suggest that evidence shows that no, that doesn't work. That dumbass stuff, which doesn't involve any examining or curiosity, it's just bull stuff, bulldozer stuff. Yes, we can do it, and then we all listen to that thing. Yeah, because we're dumb and we want the easy way. So I would suggest that the evidence of all that, from the whole experience of neurotic ill health, that is all a lesson that you can't do that. It's a lesson which we need, because it's only until we discover we can't do that we start looking for a different way, a way that isn't forcing and controlling and bulldozing our way ahead. and never taking no for an answer. And just thinking that it's like thinking that the ego is God, really, instead of learning the painful lesson that the ego is a delusion, which is very painful from the point of view of the ego, which is who we think we are, but extraordinarily valuable to learn. So, as the alchemist said, we're building up by building down. We're not improving every day, which is the lovely thing. We like to think, oh, I'm improving a little bit every day, and that's how I'm getting forward. Not at all. We're building down. We're discovering that everything's a mess, and everything we try to do to get ourselves out of that mess is making the mess worse. And so in the end, the whole personality construct disintegrates and collapses. And behind that personality construct is our true nature, which is of a much finer nature than thought, and which doesn't have this structure of a bulldozing ego. It's a much, much finer, rarefied kind of a thing. And that's what everything is made out of, so to speak, according to this way of looking at things, you could say. So that when the grosser structures that we've identified with do collapse and disintegrate all around us, that brings us back to the truth, the finer nature of things, which we have forgotten about in our rush to identify with the crude idea about who we are. So if the crude idea of who we are has to break down, or crack up, and disintegrate, once we realize that that isn't who we are, that's not such a bad thing then. The pain is totally real, and it doesn't help the pain at all, because we're kind of bonded with that false idea. We really, really, really think that that is who we are. And it's not just an intellectual thing, because I can intellectually understand that that isn't who I am. But that's not going to free me from the pain of disidentification, because on lots and lots of other levels, I'm so used just to automatically thinking that this personality construct, this personality exoskeleton, this bulldozer type entity, which is the self-construct, is who I am. And so it's not a matter of just understanding intellectually, because that would be like a shortcut. There are no shortcuts. The only way to realize it is to go through the whole process bit by bit. It's like doing a job very, very thoroughly, bit by bit. So although that is an inherently very painful thing, if we do have the understanding, and this is where the understanding or insight is really, really important, if we do have that understanding of what's going on, we don't pathologize ourselves, we don't pathologize what's happening to us. We realize that it's all part of the process. And so although it's painful, we're not judging ourselves for going through it, or thinking something's going wrong, or thinking that we've got an illness, or thinking that we need to be fixed or corrected. We actually realize that this is a healthy process, even as we protest against it. Okay, thanks for watching.